The handcuffs clicked shut around Zara Ghost Vasquez's wrists with the finality of a coffin lid. The military police officers exchanged knowing glances as they read her the charges: impersonating a Navy SEAL, possession of classified materials, and unauthorized use of military codes. What they didn't know was that the woman sitting in their custody had once been the most classified pilot in the entire United States military. Her very existence had been scrubbed from official records, her missions redacted to black ink, her call sign erased from squadron rosters. As far as the Pentagon was concerned, Ghost had never existed. But Admiral Harrison Blackwood knew better. When his secure phone rang at 300 hours, the voice on the other end made his blood run cold. "Sir, we've got a situation. A civilian woman was caught with SEAL Team 6 authentication codes. She claims she's authorized to have them." The Admiral's coffee mug shattered against his office floor. After 12 years of silence, Ghost had surfaced. The interrogation room at Naval Station Norfolk felt smaller than the cockpit of an FA-18 Super Hornet. Zara sat motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the two-way mirror, knowing that behind the glass, careers were about to be destroyed. The lead investigator, Commander Hayes, slammed a file on the metal table. Zara Vasquez, age 34, discharged from the Navy 8 years ago for medical reasons. He leaned forward, his breath reeking of stale coffee and bureaucratic authority. "So tell me, how does a washed-up pilot get her hands on codes that don't officially exist?" Zara's lips curved into the ghost of a smile, the same expression that had earned her the call sign that now haunted the Pentagon's deepest vaults. "Those codes," she said quietly, "were created for an operation that never happened, by a pilot who was never there, flying missions that were never flown." Hayes laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Lady, you're looking at 20 years in Leavenworth for—" The door exploded open. A Navy captain stormed in, his face white as sea foam, clutching a secure phone like his life depended on it. "Commander Hayes, step away from the prisoner. Now." The authority in his voice made the room temperature drop 10 degrees. "Sir, this woman is clearly delusional. She thinks she—" "Commander Hayes." The captain's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Admiral Blackwood wants to speak with you. Immediately." As Hayes reluctantly took the phone, Zara closed her eyes and remembered the weight of her helmet, the roar of twin engines, and the moment she became a legend that officially never existed. The tension in Commander Hayes' jaw told the entire story. His face had drained of color as he listened to Admiral Blackwood's voice crackling through the secure line, each word hitting him like artillery rounds. "Yes, sir. I understand, sir. No, sir, I had no idea." He set the phone down with trembling hands and stared at Zara as if she'd materialized from thin air. Behind her calm exterior, memories cascaded like falling stars. Night missions over hostile territory, her FA-18's afterburners painting silver trails across enemy skis, and the day she'd volunteered for Project Nighthawk, knowing it would erase her from history forever. The captain who'd burst into the room cleared his throat. "Commander Hayes, you are to release Ms. Vasquez immediately. All charges are dropped under National Security Order 77 Alpha." Hayes' voice cracked like thin ice. "But sir, the evidence, the codes, are legitimate," the captain finished. "Ms. Vasquez, Admiral Blackwood requests your immediate presence in his office. A transport is waiting." As the handcuffs fell away from her wrists, Zara felt the familiar weight of duty settling on her shoulders like a flight harness. She'd hoped her ghost days were behind her, but the military had a way of calling back its most valuable assets when the world started burning. Hayes sat in stunned silence as Zara straightened her civilian jacket, a worn leather bomber that had seen more combat zones than most Marines. "Commander," she said softly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd been dead on paper for 8 years, "the next time you arrest a ghost, make sure you know which graveyard she crawled out of." The drive to Admiral Blackwood's office took 18 minutes through the maze of Norfolk's naval complex. Zara pressed her forehead against the SUV's bulletproof glass, watching sailors and officers go about their morning routines, blissfully unaware that their world was about to shift on its axis. She knew that when ghosts returned from operational death, It meant something terrible was coming. Admiral Harrison Blackwood had aged 20 years in the 8 since Zara last saw him. His once black hair had surrendered to silver, and new lines mapped the campaigns he'd fought from behind Pentagon walls. But his eyes, steel gray and sharp enough to cut glass, remained unchanged. They held secrets that could topple governments and launch wars. "Ghost," he said simply, using her call sign for the first time in nearly a decade. The word hung between them like smoke from a fired round. His office overlooked the Chesapeake Bay, where morning fog clung to the water like the classified memories they both carried. Ship horns echoed in the distance, a haunting soundtrack to conversations that officially never happened. "Admiral." Zara's voice carried the weight of 8 years spent trying to forget who she used to be. She'd worked construction jobs, tended bar, even taught flying lessons to rich kids with more money than sense, anything to escape the phantom ache of afterburners and the taste of recycled cockpit air. "I buried you deep, Zara, deeper than any military file has ever been buried. Your service records, your commendations, even your goddamn dental charts, all of it incinerated and scattered to the four winds." He gestured to a chair across from his desk, but she remained standing. Old habits. "So tell me, how did you end up with authentication codes that supposedly died with you?" Zara's fingers unconsciously traced the scar on her neck, a souvenir from her last official mission, when North Korean missiles had turned her FA-18 into a falling star over the Sea of Japan. "Because, Admiral, some things are harder to kill than others. And when the world starts burning, even ghosts cast shadows." Outside the window, a formation of FA-18 Super Hornets thundered past, their engines singing the song she'd thought she'd never hear again. The sound made her chest tighten with a longing that 8 years of civilian life couldn't erase. Whatever was coming, it was big enough to resurrect the dead. Blackwood walked to his wall safe, his fingers dancing across a biometric scanner that read his retinas, fingerprints, and something deeper, the weight of command that marked men who made decisions in the darkness before dawn. The safe opened with a whisper, revealing files that existed in a parallel universe of classification levels beyond top secret. 6 months ago, our satellite surveillance detected construction at a facility that shouldn't exist. Deep in the Siberian wilderness, coordinates that officially contained nothing but frozen tundra and wolf tracks. He withdrew a photograph that made Zara's blood turn to ice water. The image showed a massive underground complex, its entrance hidden beneath what appeared to be an abandoned mining operation. But she recognized the telltale signatures, the electromagnetic shielding, the redundant power systems, the blast doors designed to withstand nuclear attack. This was a command bunker built for war. Russian aerospace technology has made quantum leaps in the past 5 years, stealth capabilities that render our most advanced radar systems blind, hypersonic missiles that can strike anywhere on Earth in 17 minutes. The Admiral's voice carried the weight of sleepless nights and classified briefings. 3 days ago, our assets went dark. 12 operatives vanished without a trace, but not before they transmitted this. He activated a secure terminal, and Zara heard something that made her heart stop, the unmistakable whine of jet engines she'd only heard in classified technical briefings. The Russian Su-75 checkmate, their answer to America's F-35. But these engines sounded different, evolved, like predators that had learned new hunting techniques. Intelligence suggests they've weaponized quantum radar technology. Our stealth aircraft are no longer invisible. Every F-22, every B-2, every advantage we've held for the past 20 years gone. Zara's mind raced through tactical scenarios, her pilot's instincts calculating odds and angles even after 8 years of forced retirement. "You didn't resurrect me for a briefing, Admiral. What do you need?" Blackwood's smile held no warmth. "I need a pilot who officially doesn't exist to fly a mission that never happened, because sometimes the only way to fight ghosts is with another ghost." The hangar at Area 51 stretched into darkness like a cathedral built to worship speed and steel. But it wasn't the size that made Zara's breath catch. It was the aircraft sitting beneath the work lights like a sleeping dragon. The X-47C Phantom was everything the public F-35 wasn't. Sleek where the Lightning was angular, predatory where the Joint Strike Fighter was utilitarian. Its carbon fiber skin absorbed light like a black hole, and its engine intake seemed to breathe with malevolent intelligence. "Jesus," Zara whispered, the profanity escaping before her military discipline could catch it. Colonel Marcus Iron Rodriguez, the project's lead engineer, emerged from beneath the aircraft's belly, wiping hydraulic fluid from his hands. His left arm ended at the elbow, a souvenir from Fallujah that he wore like a badge of honor. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" 6 years of development, $40 billion, and the collective nightmares of every enemy pilot on Earth. The Phantom represented a technological leap that made traditional aircraft look like World War I biplanes. Its quantum-encrypted systems could penetrate any defensive network. Its weapon systems could engage targets the pilot couldn't even see, and its speed defied the conventional laws of physics. Twin pulse detonation engines producing 60,000 pounds of thrust each, Rodriguez continued, his voice carrying the reverence of a man describing religious artifacts. Mach 4.2 in level flight, service ceiling of 80,000 feet, and radar signature smaller than a sparrow. Zara circled the aircraft slowly, her trained eye cataloging every surface, every angle, every detail that separated cutting-edge technology from death trap. The cockpit was larger than she'd expected, dominated by holographic displays that responded to thought patterns rather than physical inputs. "Quantum neural interface," Rodriguez explained, noticing her focus. "The aircraft reads your brain's electrical patterns and responds to your intentions before you consciously form them. Reaction time becomes irrelevant when the machine thinks with you instead of for you." As Zara's fingers traced the Phantom's sleek nose, she felt the familiar electricity of connection between pilot and machine. This wasn't just an aircraft. It was a weapon designed to hunt the unhuntable, to strike the unstrikable, to make the impossible inevitable. The first time Zara plugged into the Phantom's quantum neural interface, reality reorganized itself around her consciousness. The traditional boundaries between pilot and machine dissolved like sugar in rain, replaced by something that transcended conventional flight dynamics. She wasn't sitting in a cockpit. She was becoming the aircraft, her thoughts flowing through fiber-optic networks faster than synaptic lightning. "Neural handshake initiated," came Rodriguez's voice through the comm system. "How do you feel, Ghost?" The question seemed almost philosophical. She felt like a god learning to fly, like consciousness itself had been given wings and weapons. The Phantom systems unfolded in her mind like origami made of pure information, navigation, weapons, countermeasures, all responding to her will before she'd even formed complete thoughts. "Like coming home," she answered truthfully. Through the aircraft's quantum sensors, she could perceive the electromagnetic spectrum in colors that didn't exist in human language. Russian satellite networks appeared as glowing webs across her consciousness, their encrypted communications visible as streams of crystalline light. North Korean missile defense systems pulsed like mechanical heartbeats, their radar signatures painting geometric patterns against the darkness of space. But it was the Chinese quantum surveillance grid that made her pause, a vast artificial intelligence that watched the Pacific with electronic eyes that never blinked, never slept, never forgot. "Take her up, Ghost," Admiral Blackwood's voice crackled through the secure channel. "Let's see if 8 years of civilian life dulled your edge." Zara's laugh was dark as midnight over enemy territory. "Admiral, some things you don't forget. They just wait." The Phantom's engines ignited with a sound like reality tearing itself apart. And suddenly, they were climbing through Earth's atmosphere at an angle that would have killed any other pilot. G-forces that should have crushed her bones felt like gentle pressure against her consciousness, the neural interface distributing physical stress across quantum probability fields that existed partially outside normal space-time. At 60,000 feet, the sky turned from blue to black, and stars appeared like bullet holes in the fabric of heaven. Major Alina, Valkyrie, Kozlov had been flying Sukhoi fighters since she was old enough to reach the rudder pedals, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for the quantum-enhanced Su-75 checkmate. The aircraft didn't just fly, it danced between dimensions, its experimental drive system allowing brief excursions into quantum superposition, where her fighter could exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Russian aerospace engineers had cracked the code that American physicists insisted was impossible: weaponized quantum mechanics. "Control, this is Valkyrie," she transmitted on the encrypted frequency that connected her directly to the Kremlin's strategic command. "Beginning patrol of Grid 77, all systems nominal." But systems were far from nominal. Her quantum radar had detected something impossible cruising at 80,000 feet, an aircraft that registered as both present and absent, visible and invisible, like Schrödinger's fighter jet caught between states of existence. The contact appeared on her screens for nanoseconds before vanishing, leaving only electromagnetic ghosts and the unsettling sensation that something was watching her from the edge of space. Russian intelligence had warned of American developments in exotic aircraft technology, but this was beyond theoretical. Her heads-up display flickered as quantum interference played havoc with conventional electronics. The checkmate's artificial intelligence spoke in synthetic Russian, its voice carrying the cold precision of mathematics given consciousness. Pilot Kozlov, anomalous contact bearing 027 degrees, altitude 24 kilometers. Probability of American stealth aircraft, 93.4%. Alina's grip tightened on the control stick. She'd been hand-selected for this program not just for her flying skills, but for her psychological profile, the perfect balance of aggression and control needed to pilot an aircraft that existed partially outside reality. Her father had died fighting Americans in Afghanistan, her brother in Syria. The debt of blood demanded payment in kind. Valkyrie to control, requesting permission to investigate anomalous contact. The response came immediately, carrying the authority of decisions made in rooms where daylight never penetrated. Permission granted. Rules of engagement. Alpha 77. No survivors, no evidence. Alina smiled grimly as she pushed the checkmate into a climbing turn that defied conventional physics, quantum engines bending space-time around her aircraft like origami folded by invisible hands. 8 years of flying commercial cargo routes had taught Zara patience, but nothing could have prepared her for the surreal experience of hunting an aircraft that technically didn't exist, while piloting another aircraft that officially had never been built. The Phantom's quantum sensors painted a three-dimensional picture of Alina's checkmate climbing toward her position, its experimental propulsion system leaving exotic particle trails that looked like Aurora Borealis written in mathematics. "Ghost, we're tracking the Russian fighter on quantum resonance. She's climbing fast, and her energy signature is unusual." Rodriguez's voice carried the tension of an engineer watching his life's work face its first real test. The distance closed with mathematical inevitability, two pilots separated by political borders, but united by the ancient dance of aerial combat. Zara could feel Alina's presence through the quantum field like a second heartbeat, strong and steady and absolutely committed to killing her. "Admiral," Zara transmitted on the encrypted frequency, requesting confirmation of rules of engagement. Blackwood's response carried the weight of national security decisions made in rooms where democracy went to die. "Ghost, this contact does not exist. This engagement never happens. You are authorized to use any means necessary to protect classified technology." The euphemism was clear. Alina Kozlov was about to become a statistic in a war that both countries would deny was happening. As the two aircraft closed to within 50 miles, their quantum signatures began to interfere with each other, creating electromagnetic storms that registered on satellites around the globe. In the Pentagon's deepest bunkers, threat assessment algorithms screamed warnings about reality itself becoming unstable. But for Zara and Alina, reality had always been negotiable. They were pilots first, philosophers of applied physics second, and patriots third. The sky belonged to whoever could take it, hold it, and survive to claim it. The first shot would be fired in 17 minutes, but the war between ghosts had already begun. In the quantum realm where both aircraft partially existed, time moved differently, and death wore a dozen faces. Alina's quantum radar painted impossible pictures. The American aircraft flickered between dimensional states like a moth dancing around a flame made of pure mathematics. Her checkmate's artificial intelligence struggled to maintain target lock on something that existed in probability rather than certainty. The Russian pilot's training kicked in, muscle memory overriding the screaming protests of physics, as she armed quantum-tipped missiles that could track targets across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Valkyrie to control, target acquired. Beginning attack run. Her father's photograph was taped to her instrument panel, Colonel Viktor Kozlov, killed by American smart bombs in some classified operation that the Western media had never reported. Every mission was a prayer to his memory, every kill an offering on the altar of vengeance that Russia had erected in its secret places. The checkmate systems synchronized with her neural patterns, and suddenly Alina could feel the curvature of spacetime itself, could sense the American pilot's heartbeat through quantum entanglement fields that connected all living things in the electromagnetic spectrum. Her enemy was calm, controlled, professional, exactly the kind of American arrogance that needed to be burned out of the sky. Fox 3, Alina called as she released her primary quantum missile, watching it streak toward the target like a comet made of pure destruction. The weapon moved between dimensions, taking shortcuts through folded space that would bring it to the American aircraft in 8 seconds. But something was wrong. The American ghost wasn't evading. Instead, the Phantom was turning toward her, closing distance at a rate that suggested either supreme confidence or elaborate suicide. Alina's threat receivers erupted in warnings as invisible weapon systems locked onto her aircraft from impossible angles. The American pilot was good, better than good. She was hunting Alina while being hunted, turning a defensive position into an offensive advantage through pure tactical brilliance. As her missile closed to within 3 miles, Alina realized with crystal clarity that she was about to learn why some American pilots earned call signs that made enemy interceptors refuse to fly. The ghost was coming for her, and death rode in the Phantom's shadow like a familiar friend. Zara felt Alina's quantum missile before her instruments detected it, a disturbance in the probability field that made her teeth ache and her vision blur at the edges. The weapon moved through folded space like a guided meteor, tracking her across dimensions that shouldn't exist. But the Phantom had been designed by people who understood that conventional physics was merely a suggestion, and Zara had been chosen because her brain could process impossible realities without fracturing under the strain. Rodriguez, I've got incoming quantum ordnance. Initiating dimensional slip. The neural interface flooded her consciousness with data as the Phantom's experimental systems engaged, briefly shifting the aircraft into quantum superposition where it existed in 17 different locations simultaneously. Alina's missile, locked onto a single probability state, streaked harmlessly through empty space, while Zara materialized behind and above the Russian fighter like a metallic angel of death. Gotcha, Zara breathed, but something in Alina's flight pattern made her pause. The Russian pilot was good, better than anything in the intelligence files. Her checkmate moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd made peace with death long ago, every maneuver calculated to maximum effectiveness despite being outgunned and outclassed. Through the quantum field, Zara could sense Alina's emotions, grief, determination, and a love of country so fierce it burned like a second sun. This wasn't just another enemy pilot. This was someone fighting for ghosts of her own, carrying memories that made retreat impossible and death preferable to failure. "Ghost, you have tone," came Rodriguez's voice. "Weapons hot. Take the shot." Zara's finger hovered over the firing stud, quantum-guided missiles armed and ready to turn Alina's checkmate into scattered atoms across 3 dimensions. But something made her hesitate. a recognition that transcended nationality and politics and the cold mathematics of military necessity. They were both ghosts now, two women erased from official history, flying aircraft that didn't exist in a battle that would never be recorded. Sometimes the enemy wore a familiar face. Alina felt the American pilot's targeting lock like ice water, injected directly into her spine. Her threat receivers painted geometric patterns across her consciousness, as quantum-guided weapon systems acquired her aircraft from angles that defied three-dimensional thinking. She'd been outmaneuvered by someone who understood aerial combat on a level that transcended conventional tactics. But surrender wasn't programmed into her DNA any more than it was coded into the checkmate's quantum processors. Control, this is Valkyrie. Target has achieved superior position, requesting immediate extraction support. The response came back with the cold finality of mathematics. Negative Valkyrie. Mission parameters unchanged. No survivors, no evidence. Alina's laugh was bitter as the Siberian wind that had shaped her childhood. They wanted her to die for Mother Russia, but they wouldn't risk other assets to save her. Fair enough. She'd always known this job came with an expiration date written in enemy fire and bureaucratic expedients. Copy, control, Valkyrie out. She cut the communication link and activated the checkmate's emergency protocols, systems that existed outside normal operational parameters. If she was going to die, she'd take the American ghost with her into whatever lay beyond the quantum veil. The checkmate's reactor core began to overload in a carefully controlled cascade failure, building toward a quantum detonation that would collapse local spacetime into a miniature black hole. She had perhaps 90 seconds before the explosion vaporized everything within a 50-mile radius, including whatever remained of Alina Kozlov's dreams of seeing her homeland again. Her father's photograph smiled at her from the instrument panel, and she whispered a prayer in Russian that her mother had taught her before the state made religion illegal. "Papa, I'm coming home." But the American pilot's voice crackled through her communication system, speaking perfect Russian in a tone that carried something Alina hadn't expected: respect. "Kozlov, shut down your reactor. This doesn't have to end with both of us becoming neutrons." Alina's finger froze above the detonation switch. How did a dead American pilot know her name? The quantum field connecting both aircraft carried more than electromagnetic signatures. It transmitted memories, emotions, fragments of experiences that leaked between their consciousness like water through cracked glass. Zara found herself experiencing flashes of Alina's childhood. A small girl watching her father's military funeral, the taste of black bread and determination, the moment she decided to become a pilot to honor the dead. In return, her own memories bled through the connection. The night she'd volunteered for Project Nighthawk, knowing it would erase her from existence, the faces of teammates who died in missions that officially never happened. "My name is Zara Vasquez," she transmitted in Russian, her accent carrying the authority of someone who'd learned the language in military intelligence schools rather than university classrooms. "Call sign Ghost. I know who you are, Alina Kozlov. Daughter of Colonel Viktor Kozlov, killed in Operation Silent Thunder, Afghanistan, 2019. Alina's voice cracked like ice under pressure. "How do you know my father's name? That operation is classified beyond. Because I planned it." The words hit the comm channel like artillery rounds. "I was the targeting officer who selected the coordinates. I watched the missile strike through satellite feed. I wrote the after-action report that your government never received." The truth hung between them in the quantum field, heavy as gravity itself. Zara had spent 8 years trying to forget faces like Alina's father, dedicated soldiers who'd fought for their country and died for politicians' games. The cycle of vengeance that turned children into killers and heroes into ghosts. "Your reactor is 30 seconds from critical detonation," Zara continued. "Shut it down, Alina. Let's finish this like pilots, not like suicide bombers." Alina's hand trembled above the detonation switch. Her entire adult life had been dedicated to avenging her father's death, and now she faced his killer in aerial combat that would be sung in songs that could never be written. "Why?" Alina's voice carried the weight of a daughter's grief. Why spare the pilot who killed your father when you have the power to kill his killer? Zara's response came soft as prayer. Because ghosts don't have to stay dead forever. The reactor shutdown took 14 seconds that felt like eternities stacked end to end. Alina's fingers danced across quantum control surfaces as the checkmate's experimental power systems gradually stepped down from critical overload, exotic matter containment fields slowly stabilizing as temperatures dropped from stellar to merely infernal. The miniature black hole that would have consumed them both collapsed back into theoretical possibility, leaving only the metallic taste of near death and the electromagnetic echo of disaster narrowly averted. "Reactor offline," Alina transmitted, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd just chosen life over vengeance, a decision that would have made her father proud and her handlers furious. "Ghost, I'm reading your position, but how are you maintaining flight without visible means of propulsion?" Through the quantum field, Zara shared the secret that had made her the most classified pilot in American military history. The Phantom wasn't just using exotic matter for propulsion. It was manipulating local gravity fields, creating artificial space-time curvatures that allowed flight characteristics that bordered on magical. "Alina, my aircraft exists partially outside normal physics. Your checkmate uses quantum mechanics for weapons and sensors, but this bird flies through folded space itself." The revelation hung between them like a bridge across an ideological chasm. Both pilots had been chosen for programs that pushed human consciousness beyond normal limits. Both had become something more than human in service of countries that would deny their existence if convenient. "Control is ordering me to ram your aircraft," Alina transmitted quietly. "They consider this mission too important for individual survival." Zara could hear the decision forming in Alina's voice, the moment when a soldier stops following orders and starts following conscience. "And what do you consider important enough to die for?" The question carried the weight of 2 decades of military service, 8 years of civilian exile, and the sudden recognition that enemies could become allies when politicians became the true threat to human survival. Alina's response came after a pause that lasted exactly 7 heartbeats. "Truth," she said simply. "I consider truth worth dying for, and the truth is, this war isn't about our countries anymore." Admiral Blackwood's voice exploded through the quantum communication link with the fury of a man watching his carefully laid plans disintegrate in real time. "Ghost, what the hell is happening up there? You had a clear shot and—" "Admiral," Zara interrupted, her voice carrying an authority that 8 years of civilian life hadn't diminished. "We have a bigger problem than one Russian fighter. Alina, show them what you showed me." Alina's transmission included sensor data that made the Pentagon's quantum computers pause in their calculations. Deep space monitoring stations had detected massive gravity distortions near the edge of the solar system, signatures consistent with faster-than-light propulsion systems that belonged to neither Russia nor America nor any terrestrial power. The objects were decelerating from impossible velocities, their energy signatures unlike anything in human military databases. 3 days ago, our deep space arrays detected 12 objects entering the outer solar system, Alina transmitted, her professional pilot's voice steady despite the implications. "Each one larger than your biggest aircraft carrier, moving faster than anything bound by conventional physics. They've been decelerating ever since, and current trajectories suggest Earth orbital insertion within 72 hours. Zara's mind processed the tactical implications with computer-like precision. Humanity's greatest military powers had been focused on destroying each other, while something else approached from the darkness between stars. The timing wasn't coincidental. Their aerial confrontation had been orchestrated to mask the real threat. "Admiral," Zara transmitted, "recommend immediate stand-down of all hostile operations between U.S. and Russian forces. We're about to have company that makes our political differences seem like playground arguments." Blackwood's response carried the strain of a career military officer whose worldview was being rewritten by forces beyond terrestrial politics. "Ghost, are you suggesting I'm suggesting that whatever killed our assets in Siberia wasn't Russian technology, and whatever's coming toward Earth has been watching us long enough to know exactly how to turn us against each other. Elena's voice joined the conversation with mathematical precision. Valkyrie concurs with Ghost's assessment. Recommend immediate joint task force formation. Our survival as a species may depend on cooperation rather than competition. The quantum field connecting their aircraft suddenly resonated with new frequencies, signals from deep space that carried intelligence, purpose, and something that felt remarkably like amused contempt. The secure communication link that connected Norfolk to the Kremlin crackled to life for the first time in 12 years, carrying voices that spoke in accents shaped by different continents, but united by the mathematics of mutual annihilation. President Morrison's voice, weathered by 4 years of decisions that aged him decades, met his Russian counterpart in conversations that would never appear in official transcripts. Admiral Blackwood tells me you have intelligence on incoming objects. Russian President Volkov's voice carried the weight of a man who'd clawed his way to power through wars that most Americans couldn't pronounce. Mr. President, our quantum surveillance grid detected 12 contacts 4 days ago, initially assumed to be American experimental aircraft. The admission hung in the digital space between superpowers like a white flag raised over previously contested territory. For the past 6 years, both nations had been locked in a shadow war of quantum technology and electromagnetic sabotage, each convinced the other was preparing for first strike capabilities. Neither had been watching the sky beyond Earth's atmosphere. How long before intercept? Morrison's question carried the practical authority of someone used to making decisions with incomplete information and eternal consequences. 71 hours, 37 minutes, came Volkov's response. Our astronomers estimate each object mass is approximately 500,000 tons. Velocity upon detection was 0.37 light speed. Aboard their respective aircraft, Zara and Elena monitored the conversation while maintaining formation flight 40 miles above Earth's surface, two ghosts from different graveyards now flying as reluctant allies. The quantum field connecting their consciousness carried shared memories of childhood dreams about becoming pilots, the weight of military insignia earned in blood and sacrifice, and the growing realization that human politics meant nothing to whatever was approaching from the dark. "Ghost Valkyrie," came Admiral Blackwood's voice. "You're being recalled to base immediately. We have 48 hours to prepare for whatever this is." Elena's response carried a pilot's dry humor in the face of impossible odds. "Admiral, with respect, my government considers me expendable. Ghost and I request permission to remain on station and monitor incoming contacts." Zara's addition was inevitable. Sometimes the best reconnaissance comes from pilots who officially don't exist. We can see things that official aircraft can't acknowledge. The decision took 7 minutes of secure calls between world leaders who'd spent decades planning each other's destruction. When authorization came through, it carried the weight of species survival over national interest. The first visual contact came at sunset, when the approaching objects occluded stars that had been visible moments before. Through the Phantom's quantum-enhanced sensors, Zara watched geometric shapes that hurt her eyes to process directly, architectures that suggested intelligence operating on principles that human engineering couldn't achieve. "Elena, are you seeing this?" The shapes weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were structures that existed in more than 3 dimensions, their surfaces reflecting light that hadn't been emitted, casting shadows that fell upward into space. Each object was roughly cylindrical, but with proportions that seemed to shift depending on viewing angle, as if their builders had solved problems that human physicists insisted were mathematically impossible. "Ghost, my instruments are reading these contacts as both solid matter and empty space. Quantum signatures suggest they're composed of exotic materials that shouldn't exist at room temperature." Elena's voice carried the strain of someone trying to process sensory data that violated fundamental assumptions about reality. The objects were decelerating in perfect formation, their approach vector calculated with the precision of entities that had been watching Earth long enough to understand orbital mechanics better than the humans who lived here. No radio transmissions, no electromagnetic signatures, no attempt at communication, just the steady, inexorable approach of intelligence that operated according to rules that humanity hadn't discovered yet. "Admiral," Zara transmitted, "recommend immediate recall of all military aircraft. Whatever's coming, conventional weapons aren't going to be effective against technology this advanced." But Blackwood's response carried the desperate authority of a man whose entire career had been built on the premise that American military superiority was unquestionable. "Negative, Ghost. Joint strike packages are launching from 17 bases. We're going to show these visitors that Earth's airspace is defended." Alina's bitter laugh crackled through the comm system. "Admiral, respectfully, we're about to learn that territorial sovereignty means nothing to entities that can fold space-time like origami." But pilots follow orders, even orders that lead to beautiful disasters. The objects continued their approach with mathematical indifference to human political decisions, their exotic matter signatures growing stronger as they descended toward Earth's atmosphere like dark angels returning to claim inheritance that had always belonged to them. Colonel Marcus Iron Rodriguez had built his reputation on solving engineering problems that made other military contractors weep into their coffee. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for retrofitting human aircraft to fight entities that apparently viewed physics as more of a suggestion than a law. His remaining hand flew across holographic design interfaces as he worked to modify existing weapons systems for combat scenarios that belonged in science fiction rather than military doctrine. If these objects are using exotic matter for propulsion, conventional explosives won't even scratch their hulls. He muttered to Admiral Blackwood, who stood behind him watching Earth's most classified military technology being redesigned in real time. "We need weapons that can disrupt their quantum field generators, collapse their dimensional matrices." The Phantom's weapons bay had been retrofitted with prototypes that existed exactly nowhere in official military inventories. Quantum field disruptors that could destabilize exotic matter containment, electromagnetic pulse charges that operated across 7 dimensions, and neural interface missiles that could seek targets through consciousness itself rather than electromagnetic signatures. "Ghost Valkyrie," Rodriguez transmitted to the 2 pilots still maintaining their aerial vigil, "we're uploading new weapons packages to your aircraft. These systems are completely experimental. We have no idea if they'll work, if they'll kill you, or if they'll accidentally tear a hole in space-time." Alina's response carried the dry humor of someone who'd been dead on paper for years. "Rodriguez, we're flying aircraft that shouldn't exist, hunting aliens that definitely shouldn't exist." At this point, experimental weapons seem almost conventional. The modification process took 19 minutes that felt